So I'm going to be taking you through a solution which changes the size of a watermark depending on the size of the image that actually needs to be watermarked. And this is going to be using some of Flower's Power Automate action. So to start off my flow is manually triggered, so it's going to run when I want it to run. You could change the trigger and have this automated as well if you want. So the first thing that I'm doing in the flow is I'm actually getting the watermark image. So the image that we're going to be putting on top of the sample image, we're going to grab that, and I've got mine saved in OneDrive for this demo. Once we've got our watermarked picture, we're then going to get the watermark picture information, and this is using Flower's Get Image Properties action. So this is going to bring back lots of different items that we're going to use. More specifically, we're going to be looking at the dimensions of the image, so the X and Y dimensions on size of the image. Once we've got those properties, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get our sample images. So we can use the list files in folder OneDrive action in Power Automate. And this is because all of my sample images are saved in this sample image folder here. If your images that you need to watermark are coming in from different places, that's absolutely fine. You'll just have a different step and a different way of bringing your images into the flow. I'm also needing to initialize this variable here, which is going to be the watermark resize percentage. So a bit further down, we're going to do a bit of maths to work out how much and by what percentage the watermark needs to be resized, because the watermark, when we grab that image, it's not going to be in proportion to the sample image, because your sample images could be different sizes. The watermark might be saved as quite a large image, and there's lots of different factors, but essentially it's going to need to be resized, whether that be resized up or resized down. So once we've got all of my sample images, I'm just going through and actually getting the image content. And I can do this using the path, which we get from that list files in a folder action. And we go into and apply to each loop here. So we're going to loop through for each image within my sample image folder and complete all of these actions. So at the end of the flow, every single one of my sample images would have been dynamically watermarked. So once we've got the image content, we then again need to get the image information. So we've already got the water sized images information. Next we need to actually get the sample images information, and then we're going to do some maths to compare the size of the images to the watermark, and then that's how we're going to get our resize percentage. So we first need to determine whether our sample image is portrait or landscape, because this is going to affect the maths in the next step. And we can do this by having a look at whether the height is greater than the width. If the height's greater than the width, it's a portrait image. If not, it's either square or it's a landscape image. So if we have a portrait image, we go down the yes branch and we fall into this equation here, which is taking the width of the image and it's finding 20% of the width of our sample image. So we're going off of 20%. So we want our watermark image to be 20% of the size of the original sample image. This could be changed if you want this to be bigger, smaller. You just need to change the decimal at the end of this equation. And similarly, we have the same equation for our square or our landscape images. However, this time, instead of using the sample image width, we're looking at the sample image height. Once we know what 20% is of either the width or the height of our sample image, we can then work out what the resize percentage needs to be to get the watermark image to match those proportions. And we do this by dividing the outputs of our previous action by the height of the watermark image, and we can get the height of the watermark image because we've already worked this out by one of the first steps in the flow where we got the property dimensions for that watermark image. So we're going to bring this together here. And this equation is the same on both branches, so it's exactly the same on either side. Lastly, once we've got this, we just need to set our variable with this output. So we're setting the resize percentage variable to be using later on. And I've put all of these outputs in floats just to make sure that they are being saved as float values rather than integers. So the next step we have to do is we have to actually resize our watermark image using the percentage that we just calculated. So this uses the second different type of flower action in the solution today, and this is the resizing and image action. So we're going to resize our watermark image using the watermark image content that we grabbed right at the top of the flow. We're going to change it to percentage, and then we're going to put our resize percentage in here. And this if statement here is just rounding the percentage either up or down. And of course we want to maintain aspect ratios so that the watermark image looks nice when it's put onto the sample image. So now we've resized the watermark image, we now actually need to put it onto our sample. So this is our third type of flow action that we see in the flow today, and this is the actually adding a watermark to image action. So this is really simple. We're just going to grab the file name and the file content of our sample image. We're going to grab the watermark file name, and we're going to put the watermark file content as the file content, not from the OneDrive action, but actually from the previous step, the resizing a watermark image action, because that's going to be our resized watermark content. And in my images, I'm going to put it on the bottom left, but there's lots of different options here for you to place your watermark wherever you see best in your image. And lastly, I'm just going to save my newly watermarked images to a new folder. Again, this step may change depending on what you want to do with your images once they're watermarked. So now let's see what kind of results you can get using this solution. So I have already run my flow on my sample images, and this is what my sample images end up looking like. So we can see we've got a mixture of landscape, portraits, we've got different size images here, and we can see that the watermark is changing size each time, it's changing proportion based on the sizes of the images and on the image's orientation too. And we can see that it does look very consistent with the size of the images. The larger images are having the larger watermarks, the smaller images have smaller watermarks. So everything works well and looks in proportion and is ready to go for whatever the use is of your image.